Mark here with Mark's Max Muscle. And today, we're finally going to be discussing this man. He is the legend Larry Scott. Born in 1938, standing 5'7", weighing 208 pounds, he was an American bodybuilder. In fact, he was the very first ever Mr. Olympia. And the only ever Mr. Olympia, and only ever bodybuilder for that matter, to have never lost on the Olympia stage. Now, on a resume, this is unbeatable. Because, and I'm only going to say this once, because Larry Scott beat Sergio Oliva, who beat Arnold Schwarzenegger, who beat Franco Columbu, who beat Frank Zane, who beat Chris Dickerson, who beat Samir Banu, who beat Lee Haney, who beat Dorian Yates, who beat Ronnie Coleman, yeah buddy, don't worry, I'm almost done, who beat Jay Cutler, who beat Dexter Jackson, who beat Phil Heath. And all these victories were on the Olympia stage. So in theory, Larry Scott could beat Phil Heath. In theory. But of course, in theory, these two guys could have been Mr. Olympia. Not in my opinion. But anyway, back to Mr. Olympia, Larry Scott. You will often hear me say a guy was way ahead of his time. Or in Charles Claremont's case, he should have competed before he did. But when I think of Larry Scott, I think of 1965. This is what a championship physique should have looked like back then. I think Scott hit his prime right when he needed to. He had incredible arm development, and pec development as well. His arms had no real weaknesses. Biceps and triceps were in perfect proportion. And a world-class set of delts. Scott, of course, won the Olympia in 65 and in 66. But he also has a Mr. America and a Mr. Universe title to his credit. His first notable win was way back in 1959, as he won Mr. Idaho. Scott looking quite young in this picture. Let's skip ahead to 1979. Larry Scott made his way back to the competitive stage. In my opinion, this comeback definitely should not have happened. He did 2 shows in Canada, placing 9th in one and not even placing in the other. Sadly, this was not a great comeback, to say the very least. Sometimes it's just better to live off your legacy. One of my favorite moments involving Scott was at the 1995 Mr. Olympia contest, where they had all 9 Olympia winners brought out on stage. As Joe Weider finished up interviewing each champion, finishing off with, of course, Dorian, the current champ at that time. Anyway, as Joe made his way back, Arnold grabbed the mic for one last word. Larry Scott seen what was happening, and then he quickly grabbed the mic from Arnold just to simply say, "I think it would be really wrong if we let Arnold have the last word." Classic. Quite a moment to have all those legends on the stage at once. Something, of course, that'll sadly never happen again. Because in 2014, Larry Scott died at the age of 75. Scott will go down in history as being the only bodybuilder to have never lost on the Olympia stage. And, of course, being the very first ever Mr. Olympia. He is the legend. He is the golden boy. And he is Larry Scott. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. That's it for now. This is Mark for Mark's Max Muscle.